Translation by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta, Swami Srila Prabhupada. Maharaj Ambrish was a great devotee of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Vasudev, and of the saintly personalities who are the Lord's devotees. Because of this devotion, he thought of the entire universe as being as insignificant as a piece of stone. So there's no purport to this particular verse. So we'll carry on reading. Savai mana Krishna padara vindayor vacham sivai kuntha gunanu varnane karau harer mandira majana dishu shutim chakarachyuta satkathodaye mukunda lingalaya darshane drisho tadpritya gatra sparshyanga sangamam Granam cha tatpad saroja saurabhe Srimat tulasya rasanam tad arpite Padav hare kshetra padanusarpane Shiro rishikesha padabhivandane Kamam cha dasye natu kama kamayaya Yatha uttama shloka Janashraya Rati. So this is verses 18 to 20. I think we should also, maybe we don't have time, I don't know. We should also read word for this, because we'll be discussing this later on. Okay. Sa, he, Maharaj Ambrish, Vai, indeed, Mana, his mind, Krishna Pad Aravindayo, fixed upon the two lotus feet of Lord Krishna. Vachamsi, his words, Vaikuntha Gunanu Varnane, describing the glories of Krishna. Karau, his two hands. Harer Mandira Marjana Dishu, in activities like cleansing the temple of Hari, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Shrutim, his ear. Chakar, engaged. Achyuta, of or about Krishna, who never falls down. Sat Katha Uddaye, in hearing the transcendental narrations. Mukunda Linga Alaya Darshane, in seeing the deity and temples and holy dhams of Mukunda. Drisha, his two eyes. Tat Bhritya, of the servants of Krishna. Gatra Sparshe, in touching the bodies. Anga Sangamam, contact of his body. Granam Cha, and his sense of smell. Tatpad, of his lotus feet. Saroj, of the lotus flower. Saurabhe, in smelling the fragrance. Srimat Tulsaya, of tulsi leaves. Rasanam, his tongue. Tat arpite, in the prasad offered to the Lord. Padav, his two legs. Harer, of the personality of Godhead. Kshetra, holy places like temples of Vrindavan and Dwarka. Pada Anusharpane, walking to those places. Shira, the head. Rishikesh, of Krishna, the master of the senses. Pada Abhivandane, in offering obeisances to the lotus feet. Kamam cha, and his desires. Dasye, in being engaged as a servant. Na, not. Tu, indeed. Kama kamayaya, with a desire for sense gratification. Yatha, as. Uttama sloka, jana ashraya. If one takes shelter of a devotee such as Prahlad. Rati, attachment. Translation. Maharaj Ambrish was always engaged his mind in meditating upon the lotus feet of Krishna. His words in describing the glories of the Lord. His hands in cleansing the Lord's temple. And his ears in hearing the words spoken by Krishna or about Krishna. He engaged his eyes in seeing the deity of Krishna, Krishna's temples, and Krishna's places like Mathura and Vrindavan. He engaged his sense of touch in touching the bodies of Lord's devotees. He engaged his sense of smell in smelling the fragrance of tulsi offered to the Lord. And he engaged his tongue in tasting the Lord's prasad. He, Lord, he engaged his legs in walking to the holy places and temples of the Lord. His head in bowing down before the Lord, and all his desires in serving the Lord 24 hours a day. Indeed, Maharaj Ambrish never desired anything for his own sense gratification. He engaged all his senses in devotional service, in various engagements related to the Lord. This is the way to increase attachment for the Lord and be completely free from all material desires. Shri Shri Radha Gokulananda ki, Sitaram Lakshman Hanuman ki, Gaur Nitai ki, Srila Prabhupada ki. Purport. In Bhagavad Gita 7.1, the Lord recommends Maya Ashakta Mana Partha Yogam Yunjam Mad Ashraya. This indicates that one must execute devotional service under the guidance of a devotee or directly under the guidance of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. It is not possible, however, to train oneself without guidance from the spiritual master. Therefore, according to the instructions of Srila Rupa Goswami, the first business of a devotee is to accept a bona fide spiritual master who can train him to engage his various senses in rendering transcendental service to the Lord. The Lord also says in Bhagavad Gita, Asamsayam samagram mam yatha gnasyasi tak shrinu. In other words, if one wants to understand the Supreme Personality of Godhead in completeness, one must follow the prescriptions given by Krishna by following in the footsteps of Maharaj Ambrish. It is said, Rishikena Rishikesha Sevanam Bhaktir Uchyate. Bhakti means to engage the senses in the service of the master of the senses, Krishna, who is called Rishikesha or Achyuta. These words are used in these verses. Achyuta Sat Kathodaye, Rishikesha Pada Vivandane. The words Achyuta and Rishikesha are also used in Bhagavad Gita. Bhagavad Gita is Krishna Katha, spoken directly by Krishna. And Srimad Bhagavatam is also Krishna Katha, because everything described in Bhagavatam is in relationship with Krishna. Namam Vishnupadaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swamin iti namine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvisesa Sunyavadi Paschatya Desatarine. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Sivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna. So here, in this chapter, we're hearing about Ambarish Maharaj. So why are we hearing about Ambarish Maharaj? In the 9th canto, in this particular chapter, the 4th chapter. So, at the beginning of this canto, Parikshit Maharaj is requesting Sukadeva Goswami to speak about Vaivashvata Manu. Vaivashvata Manu is the grandson of Vivashwan. No, he's the son of Vivashwan. Then Kashyapa is his grandfather, right? And then we have Swayambhuva Manu, we already spoke about. That's already been discussed about. Narada is already been spoken about. These are all sons of Brahma. Daksha also is been spoken about. So here, Parikshit Maharaj wants to hear about Vaivashvata Manu. Why? Because this Vaivashvata Manu is the present Manu. And specifically, in this dynasty of Vaivashvata Manu, we will hear about the incarnations of Lord Krishna, Lord Balaram. We will hear also about Parshuram, Lord Ram, and great personalities such as Yayati, Puru, Kuru, Purava. So this is also the forefathers of Parikshit Maharaj. Therefore, Parikshit Maharaj is requesting that please tell me about this dynasty of Vaivashvata Manu. Also, this Vaivashvata Manu is in the previous millennium, he was Satyavrata. In the 8th canto, we heard about how Lord in his fish incarnation gave guidance to Satyavrata. So, therefore Parikshit Maharaj is requesting Sukadeva Goswami to speak about Vaivashvata Manu. And in the 1st chapter of the 9th canto, we hear about Vaivashvata Manu, and also we hear about Sajumna, who was one of the sons of Vaivashvata Manu, son or daughter, however you want to take it. Right? And then in the 2nd chapter, we hear about the other sons, specifically Kavi, who from birth was devoted to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Also we hear about Prishadhar, who killed a cow by accident, and by practicing mystic yoga and devotional service, he went back to Godhead. In the 3rd chapter, we hear of Sukanya and Chavana Muni. And Sukanya is the daughter of Saryati, who was another son of Vaivasvata Manu. And in this particular chapter, we start off with hearing about Nabhag, which is another son of Vaivasvata Manu. And his son was Nabhag. And Nabhag's son is Ambarish Maharaj. Okay? So Ambarish Maharaj, the term Ambarish means ambrosia or nectar. Someone who was always hearing the nectarian pastimes, nectarian names of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. But Parikshit Maharaj is a little bit confused, because Sukadeva Goswami mentions Ambarish Maharaj, and then he says, Sukadeva Goswami says, although he was a king of the world, he was a king, powerful king of the world, he had so much opulence, he was ruling very nicely the world, but yet he was completely detached. And he was unaffected by the curse of a Brahmana, curse of a sage, great sage, Durvasa Muni. So therefore Parikshit Maharaj is wondering, how is this that Ambarish, although he was a king, but he's completely detached? That's the first thing. And the second thing, how is it that he is not affected by a curse of a Brahmana? Because curse of a Brahmana and great sage as Durvasa Muni, right, nobody becomes free. They say something and it happens. Right? Especially mystic personality as Durvasa Muni. How is this possible? So then Sukadeva Goswami starts to describe the qualities of Ambarish Maharaj, and specifically how he was detached, although he was the king of the world. And this particular verse describes how he is detached. How he is detached. What was the reason for his detachment? How was he able to detach himself? So this is what's been discussing, and also previous verses, couple of verses as well. This is what's being discussed. So, if we look at these, specifically these verses 18 to 20, it's interesting. Durvasa Muni, he should be completely detached. He's the greatest of renunciates. He has 60,000 followers, sannyasis, and he's the chief of those sannyasis of renunciate. He should be detached. But here we have Sukadeva Goswami speaking about detachment of Ambarish Maharaj. How was he able to attain that detachment? Maharaj Ambarish was always engaged. Maharaj Ambarish always engaged his mind in meditating upon the lotus feet of Krishna. How was he able to detach? Always engaged his senses and his mind in meditating on the lotus feet of Krishna. So word always is used, and in Sanskrit way, indeed. And again Prabhupada repeats later on and translated as 24 hours a day. And that word is tu. Tu also means indeed, and way also means indeed. So Prabhupada, for the first time he uses it as always, translated as always, and the second time, 24 hours a day. So this was the reason why he was detached from all his opulence, from his kingdom. and mind. The term mind, manaha. Mind, sometimes we also use it to refer to the heart. Right? Mana, atma, sometimes heart, they're kind of synonymously used. Mind, heart, the self. So not only were his senses engaged, but his mind was also engaged. His heart, his consciousness was also in Krishna, with Krishna. So here is the lesson for the devotees, all of us. You may be thinking, yes, I smell the flowers of the Lord, the incense of the Lord, the leaves, the tulsi leaves. I take chanamrita, I offer obeisances, right? I see the Lord. But how come I'm not in the Bhagavatam? Why is Ambarish Maharaj being glorified? The first point is, always he did this. And his mind was also engaged. So when we're doing all these devotional activities, where is our mind? Where is our heart? Where is our self? To the degree our mind is not engaged, our self is not engaged, our consciousness is not engaged in Krishna, to that degree we're actually away from Krishna. Even though externally we may be performing these devotional activities. Of course there's benefits of that, but if we want the real benefit, then our mind, our heart, our consciousness must be in the right place. And this is why Maharaj Ambarish was able to completely detach himself. Maharaj Ambarish, his heart, his mind was in the right place. Chakar, the word chakar is used in this verse, in this set of verses. Chakar, here Prabhupada has translated as engaged. And Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, some devotees refer to him as Chakravarti Pad. So Chakravarti Pad, in his Sha'artha Darshini, he says that just as king has subjects, his ministers, his servants, and when the king decides, when he desires, he orders these ministers, these servants, his subjects, and the subjects respond, and they serve the king. They dedicate their life to the king. They dedicate their life to the order of the king. Similarly, Maharaj Ambarish, he had complete control of his senses. Right? When he desired, how he desired, he was able to engage his subjects, his senses, his mind. Chakar, engaged. Then the word Satkatha Udaye, in hearing the transcendental narrations, specifically Sat is used, as opposed to hearing about karma, or as opposed to hearing about Gnan, hearing about Sat. Sat refers to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Sat refers to devotional service. Sat refers to hearing about something eternal. Sat Katha Udaye. This is what Maharaj Ambarish did. He engaged his legs in walking to the holy places and temples of the Lord. So this is interesting. Sometimes I get car park services, right? And devotees want to come right at the front, and also, actually, generally the visiting devotees, the congregation, generally they're alright. You can tell them, park here, then they're fine. But the regular devotees, they find it hard. They've got to really park behind the kitchen. Or if possible, come in the temple room, right? So here, this is actually devotional service, to walk to the temple. Here Maharaj Ambarish engaged his legs in walking to the temple. Just going back a little bit, Mukanda Linga Alaya Darshane. So Prabhupada is translated as to the holy places, so visiting the holy places and temples of the Lord, but also alaya, right? Alaya is referring to the residence of the sages, the saintly personalities. These are also places of pilgrimage. This is what also Ambarish Maharaj did. Associated with the saints and the sages, and also visited their hermitages. And we know of the verse in the Bhagavatam, the first canto, second chapter, text 10, where Yudhishthira Maharaj is welcoming Vidura. And what did he say? Bhavad Vida Bhagavatas Tirtho Bhuta Swayam Vibho Tirthani Kurvanti Tirthi Kurvanti Tirthani Swantasthena Gadabrita. So he's saying to Vidura, oh my Lord, right? The holy places of pilgrimage are non-different from you. You're like walking holy places. Why? Swantasthena Gadabrita. Because you have the Supreme Personality of Godhead within your heart. So wherever you go, wherever the Lord goes, is the holy place. So if the Lord is within the heart of the devotee, then also, and that devotee is traveling, wherever he's staying, wherever he's traveling, that becomes a holy place. So linga, lingaya, or alaya. Alaya specifically specifically referring to places of the devotees. So not only Mathura, Vrindavan, but usually that's where devotees reside, but they may also be traveling around, and they may be also residing in other places. But these places are also holy places. And Ambarish Maharaj visited also these holy places as well. It's interesting, also the term kama kamayaya is used with desires for sense gratification. Of course, there's other words which kind of justifies this, because you say Maharaj Ambarish never desired anything for his own sense gratification. But why is this important? Sense gratification. Maharaj Ambarish was engaged so much in devotional service to the Lord. He was completely engaged in the service of the Lord. It may have seemed like a person who's engaged in sense gratification. So that much he was absorbed in serving the Supreme Personality of Godhead, in engaging in his senses in serving the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So kama kamaye, these terms are used. And then uttama shloka jana ashraya. If one takes shelter of the devotees such as Prahlad, then rati, attachment is achieved. Attachment to the Supreme Personality of Godhead is achieved. Prabhupada doesn't mention the term Prahlad in his translation, but in the purport, he takes the instructions of Prahlad and gives guidance to the devotee, what the devotee should do. So, Prahlad, what was Ambarish Maharaj doing? How was he following the instruction of Prahlad? Shravanam Kirtanam Vishnu, Smaranam Pada Sevanam, Archanam Vandanam Dasyam, Sakhyam Atma Nivedanam, Iti Pumsa Prita Vishnu, Bhaktischan Navalakshana, Kriyate Bhagavata Ada, Tanmanye, Dhitam Uttamam. Prahlad Maharaj is saying that here, chant, remember, and one who engages in this 9 process of devotional service, then that person is the most intelligent. Tanmanye dhitam uttamam. So this is what Ambarish Maharaj was doing. Hearing, chanting, remembering, worshipping, right? Offering obeisances. So in this way, Jana Ashraya, Jan is referring to Prahlad, an ashraya, taking shelter of. Right? Uttama shloka. So Uttama shloka refers to the Supreme Lord, and also someone who is glorified or is as good as the Supreme Lord. So the devotee, Prahlad Maharaj. So he was taking the instructions and the guidance from Prahlad Maharaj. So what was the results? He engaged all his senses in devotional service in various engagements related to the Lord. This is the way to increase attachment for the Lord and to be completely free from material desires. So if one wants to be free from material desires, this is the solution given. And Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur says this is also the method to go from sadhana to prema. Okay, let's read the purport. There's 3 things Prabhupada talks about in the purport. First one, this is elaborating on Uttama Shloka Jana Ashraya, Prahlad Maharaj. In Bhagavad Gita, the Lord recommends Maya Ashakta Mana Partha Yogam Yanjan Mad Ashraya. This indicates that one must execute devotional service under the guidance of a devotee or directly under the guidance of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. It is not possible, however, to train oneself without guidance from the spiritual master. Therefore, according to the instructions of Srila Rupa Goswami, the first business of the devotee is to accept a bona fide spiritual master who can train him to engage his various senses in rendering transcendental service to the Lord. So the first point here Prabhupada is making is taking guidance. And we have here the example of Ambarish Maharaj taking guidance from Prahlad Maharaj. And Prabhupada also says, you can also take guidance, if you're lucky, directly from the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So Arjuna took guidance from the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Otherwise, we take guidance from the devotee. And specifically, Prabhupada mentions here, the spiritual master. And he quotes Srila Rupa Goswami. Right? The first instruction of Rupa Goswami, the first item of devotional service, or the first few items of devotional service, refers to the spiritual master. So this is the first point in the purport that Prabhupada brings out. The second point, Lord also says in Bhagavad Gita, Asamsayam samagram mam yatha nasyashi taksharno. In other words, if one wants to understand the Supreme Personality of Godhead in completeness, one must follow the prescriptions given by Krishna by following in the footsteps of Maharaj Ambarish. What's the second point? Anybody have any ideas? Follow in the footsteps of personalities like Maharaj Ambarish. So just do what Ambarish Maharaj did. Tarko pratishtha shutayo vibhinna nasha rishi yashya matam nabhinam dharmasya tattva nihitam guhayam mahajano yena gathasa pantha. So following in the footsteps of the Mahajans. Why? Because they know the instructions. They keep the instructions, the messages of the Supreme Personality of Godhead within their heart. So Prabhupada is saying, Prahlad Maharaj, Ambarish Maharaj, these are the personalities in footsteps we should be following. Narad Muni, Prahlad Maharaj, Bhishma, Janak, Bali Maharaj. And thirdly, it is said, Rishikena Kesha Sevanam Bhaktir Uchyate. Bhakti means I just lost where I was. Bhakti means to engage the senses in the service of the master of the senses, Krishna, who is called Rishikesha or Achyuta. These words are used in these verses. Achyuta Sata Kathodaye Rishikesha Padabhivandane. The words Achyuta and Rishikesha are also used in Bhagavad Gita. Bhagavad Gita is Krishna Katha, spoken directly by Krishna. And Srimad Bhagavatam is also Krishna Katha because everything is described in the Bhagavatam is in relationship with Krishna. So the third point here Prabhupada is making is why specifically we should take shelter of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Why should I engage my senses in the service of the Lord? Why should I engage my mind and myself in the service of the Lord? Why? Rishikesha and Achyuta. He is Rishikesha and he is Achyuta. Because by doing so, one will get the mercy of the Lord. And because he is the Lord, he is the master of the senses. He will be able to inspire you, he will be able to guide you through the heart and help you to control your senses and be detached. So that's the first thing. And the second is Achyuta. Achyuta, infallible. Because he is infallible. If one serves him, then one never goes in vain. It is infallible. So therefore, when Arjuna is speaking to Krishna, regularly, he refers to him as Rishikesha and Achyuta. Why? To bring this out, this sentiment out from the Lord. Now please help me control my senses. I'm bewildered, I'm confused, I'm depressed. Please help me to control my senses. My mind is reeling. My weapon, Gandiva, is slipping from my eyes. Please help me control my senses, Rishikesha, because you're the master of the senses. And you're Achyuta. You're infallible. So regularly, Arjuna is calling Krishna Achyuta and Rishikesha. So therefore, this is the reason why specifically we should engage our senses in serving the Supreme Personality of Godhead and engage our mind and ourself. So in this way, we'll be able to become detached. And this is how Ambarish Maharaj became detached, as opposed to Durvasa Muni. And therefore, because he became detached by engaging his senses in the Supreme Personality of Godhead, his detachment is superior than of Durvasa Muni. And we'll be reading about this in the remaining verses of the chapter. Ana ashaktasya vishayan yatha aram upyunjita nirbandha Krishna sambandhe yuktam vairagyam uchyate. So this is how one should practice detachment. By yukta vairagyam. Nirbandha Krishna sambandhe, in relationship to the Supreme Personality of God. This is how Ambarish Maharaj did. And therefore, he is spoken about and is glorified, and he was able to overcome the curse of a Brahmana, sage, mystic, such as Durvasa Muni. Then the question arises, I'm going to finish on this point. Shri Radha Gokula Nanda ki, Sita Ram Lakshman Hanuman ki, Shri Gaur Nitai ki. So naturally the question arises that how specifically did Ambarish Maharaj become detached in his day-to-day activities as a king? Because that involves politics, diplomacy, opulence, money, right? You know, so many varieties of people in the kingdom, so many things to deal with, management. How specifically, was he able to detach himself? How did he carry out his day-to-day activities? The answer is given in the next verse, and that will be discussed on Friday. So this is something to look forward to. Okay? So thank you very much. It's exactly 8:15. I think we're going to stop there because there's early breakfast there. That's the main reason. Otherwise we could carry on. And there's also a few other things going on, some hygiene, cleanliness activities that are going on in different parts of the building. So therefore we're having an early breakfast and we're finishing early. So Srila Prabhupada ki